Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so companies can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Byron Wolfe. Hi, Byron.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Man, it's an amazing day. Beautiful Phoenix, Arizona over here.
Amazing. Well, I'm really excited about our conversation today because, first of all, your bio, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to have you talk because I think our listeners are going to be very interested in it. So, you have the gift of translating the complexities of business financial principles into communication that business owners can really understand, right? I mean, you talk about what's important in a business, how to scale a business, about find the financial tools that are really needed in order for the business to grow. You have fractional CFO, which I'm going to have you explain what that means. And you help businesses grow by directing them through their finances, right?
That's correct. Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start. People are probably asking, what is a fractional CFO? So what's your definition of a fractional CFO?
So the fractional CFO is kind of a newer concept, and how that came about is we knew that there was this gap in between being a small business owner where you kind of did everything yourself and you just reached out to anybody you knew to try to find solutions to problems or help in any way. And then there was big corporations that had the money, had the resources to hire in the best, and they would bring people in and they could tell them where to go. Like they were allowed them to specialize, they could solve all these problems at such a high level because of that specialization. Well, there's so many entrepreneurs and business owners that fall kind of in the middle, and they need that high level advisement. They need that high level of advice, insight, direction, but they can't necessarily afford the $300 to $1 million chief financial officer that the big companies can afford. So the fractional CFO space allows us to step in, not on a full-time, 40-hour a week, but we can spend, a few hours with a client, with a customer, with a business, and we can do the high level things that they need to get done so that they can scale their business. They can have that high level oversight of their operations. So instead of paying a whole lot of money for somebody to be in the office all the time, you don't really need it. This allows them to pay a much smaller portion of money, then still have the same insights and direction that they need for the size of their business. And that's really what a fractional CFO does.
Yes. How did you get started with that? Like, how did you become a CFO?
So I've been a CPA for a number of years. Still am an active CPA. I love the tax strategy and the concept of that. But what I really loved was dealing with clients, dealing with businesses. They would come in, they would tell us their problems. And because I've been a small business owner myself and built, scaled, sold a number of businesses, I had insight into the things that they were dealing with, and I was able to answer some of those questions, give them advice. And so what I found in the CPA space is I was doing a lot more of that than I really was talking about their taxes. And so it allowed me to become really a specialist in being the fractional CFO and being the tax strategy person, which I believe go hand in hand. And I had a official job as a CFO, still have a few of those officially as a CFO, but that gave me the influence, the insight, the education, the real world experience to be able to really help a number of people. And with that came more and more people reaching out for, hey, can you help me with this? Or can you give me some advice here? And I said, hey, this is really where I thrive. This is where I love to be. And I can make such a big impact on a lot of different businesses and be able to do that for a lot of different people in the fractional CFO space.
Absolutely. That's Definitely, you can make an impact by going on that angle on a lot of small businesses that definitely need that in order to grow. So let's talk about that aspect. What do you see most right now in terms of the topics, the hot topics, or the things that you encounter the most with your clients?
Yeah. So, right now we're dealing with a lot of scalability. They're doing well. They're putting in the work. They're growing their businesses. They're seeing phenomenal revenue growth. Phenomenal profit growth. Their teams are growing. But what gets you to one level of business doesn't necessarily get you to the next level of business.
Right.
And so they're hitting these, I don't want to call them ceilings, but essentially, glass ceilings where they've hit this point, and what they did to get there, like how they grew it, isn't necessarily working to like get over that hump and get to the next space. And so maybe they need to expand their team. Maybe they need more specialization within the team. Maybe they need new revenue streams, maybe they need to focus on a different way of doing business. But whatever it is that they need, they're so buried in the business that they're having a really hard time working on the business. So scalability is a big piece. But with scalability comes another issue that we see, and that's cash flow. And so cash flow is the lifeblood. It's the oxygen of a business. And if you don't manage your cash flow, if you don't have cash flow, obviously catastrophic, but if you're not managing your cash flow, you don't know the timing of when that cash is going to come and when it's going to go out. And so managing the cash flow, making sure that you have adequate cash flow to run your business is tantamount. It's huge. It's so crazy important. And we deal with we see these businesses and they come in, they're like, I'm making so much money, my revenue is so high, and our tax guy says our profit margin's great, and we owe a bunch of money on taxes, and we don't have that money. Our bank balance don't say that. There's something wrong here. Like somebody messed up.
I mean, that's a very good point. So what do you say to that point? Like in terms of what are some of the tactics or strategies, the strategy and then the tactics of managing cash flow?
Yeah. So you have to look at things you wouldn't normally look at. So you need to look at what your account receivable balance is, what that is, the timing of those accounts receivable. So it's what you've billed out and what other people owe you or owe your business. You need to look at your payables. So if you've got a lot of bills that are coming in and you're paying those immediately when you get them, that's great. And I think that that's a great way to build a good name in business. But a lot of times those bills come a little early, or maybe they're coming, but they're a net 30 or a net 60, meaning that you have 30 days to pay it or 60 days to pay it. And so if you have customers that don't have to pay you for, say, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and you're incurring those expenses and you're able to push those out 30, 60, 90, then that's going to be a much better timing. Like when you pay that money out, the money is coming in at the same time. But if you're waiting, say, 90 days to get money in, and you're paying those expenses immediately, you could do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projects in the time and incur all of those expenses before you even get paid for the first project or the first job or whatever it is that you're doing. And so knowing the timing of those is really important. And that's where you have to look at the balance sheet. You have to look at what's owed to me. What do I owe? Not just in the short term, but also in the long term, because you probably have some loans outstanding that you have to pay. Like, what's the balance of those? A lot of people have credit lines, that the bank gives them, and then they're operating off of those credit lines. What does your payroll look like? We all incur payroll if you have employees. What's our payroll tax liability? What's our tax liability? So as we're making money, we don't get to keep all of it. The government wants to get their little cut, so we need to account for that. We need to know what we're going to have to pay at the end of the year and either make the estimated payments or like I like to do is I like to hold on to it because I can make money on money. But I know at the end of the year, this is my liability. This is the amount of money that I'm going to have to, that I have to pay in. So knowing the timing of the cash flow and the cash, that goes out, that's everything. You have to know that stuff.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of the profit versus revenue, you mentioned that. What are some of the strategies that you use in order to actually increase profit and not just have high revenue?
Yeah, so this is the area I love to talk about with new clients or new customers, new businesses, especially the young, new, entrepreneurs that are so excited about the business, and they and they come in and they're so excited about their revenue. Oh, we made so many dollars, like we made this a massive amount of dollars, and you kind of get caught up in the excitement, and it is exciting. But I tell people all the time, revenue is the brag and profit is the real scoreboard, right? So how much money you make, it's great. And I think it's an amazing thing to get focused on, to get excited about. But what you actually get to take home, the profit, what's left over after the expenses, like that's the real scoreboard. If your profit is high, those are the dollars you get to spend on, whatever you want to, right? You can spend that on fun stuff. You can spend that on supporting your family. You can spend that on supporting your charity. But the revenue dollars, those come with expenses. You can't spend those yet. So, I try to break it down as simple as I can, because that's the best way to look at it. You have revenue at the top, the dollars that are coming in, and then there's profit at the bottom, which is the amount that you get to keep. That's generally, before tax. But if we want to consider tax, we throw that in. Everything in between is an expense. And so if we're going to get better on our profitability, which is the real take home, that's the real, trophy, that's the real win, whatever, we have to manage those expenses. And so as we build this company, if we have good revenues that are coming in, I try to get them to focus more on minimizing the expenses and maximizing the profitability, not to the detriment of the revenue. But if we know our revenue is continuing to grow, we want to make sure that our expenses aren't growing at the same level, that our profit doesn't change. And hopefully we can get those expenses to go down based against that revenue. So again, you're not going to have, like, if it's, a couple $100,000 in expenses, obviously, if you could make that go down, fantastic. But if your revenue is going up, if you double your revenue, we want to make sure that hopefully our expenses, if we can help it, don't double as well. So
right, because that's part of the scalability, right? When people talk about the scalability, it's not just the growth, it's also making it so you actually also have more profit.
Yes, because that's what you get to take home. That's the most important thing, right? And so if we can figure out how to get expenses to less than double, if you double your revenue, if expenses are less than double, great. But even if they just double in line, then you've increased your profit there. But what we don't want is to see a bigger increase in our expenses in line with the revenue. So if revenue doubles, but our expenses double and a half, well, then we're making more money revenue wise, but all of a sudden we're taking less money home, and that's horrible. Nobody wants to work harder for less money. That's right. A bad deal. So, if we can work more and make significantly more, that's great. Or on the flip side, if we can work less by having more people and make more money, even better, right? And so that's where the scalability comes in, is you replace yourself and you start to get the people specialized in their position. You get the right team around you. You're scaling correctly. You get the right team. And so instead of trying to do everything yourself, as most entrepreneurs do, you find yourself just working on the business and not in the business, and you're making more money with less work on your part. And that's really where we want to be.
Absolutely. I agree. So, I hear it a lot, like work on the business. I talk about it as well. What are some of the things that the entrepreneur should be working on? What does it mean to work on the business?
Yeah. So you want to look at your metrics, what is really moving the needle for your business. And so we all know, if we get in there and we work in the business, we can do something that an employee maybe would do, or a contractor would do, or whoever. And a lot of us tend to think, okay, well, I'm saving money because I'm not paying for this. But if you're doing a, say, $17 an hour job, so that somebody else doesn't do a 17-hour job, that's probably not a good use of your time. You save $17 an hour, which is true, but if you're the owner of the company, your time's probably worth a lot more than $17 an hour. So I like to do an assessment of what your time is actually worth. And then anything that's below that, we need to hire that in, or we need to find somebody that can do that for you, so that you're focused on the higher dollar items and then on up from there. And so I believe that's a big piece of it. If you can find the metrics, the things that really move the needle for you, those KPIs, key performance indicators, then okay, if I focus on this KPI, this particular metric, then my revenue goes like this and my profit goes like this. And so I know that if I spend my time here, that's my result. That's where I'm really going to push the needle. And so knowing all of those and knowing how to manipulate those or manage those is huge. That's vitally important. And then looking at the big picture. So as you grow this business, there's things that you need to look at. Like, are there revenue lines that we're not in currently that we could be, that would be profitable for us? Are there new customers, new clients, new areas, new target markets that we could be utilizing to grow this business? And so trying to find those, finding those solutions is going to be huge. Going after financing. Almost every company is at some point going to need some kind of financing, whether it comes from VC, the bank, going public, whatever. And so that takes way more time than people realize. So if you can spend some time on that and really collateralize or monetize the business in a much better position, you're going to have much higher level of growth because you're well capitalized. So those are just a few examples of what I would say is working on the business instead of working in the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what you do as an executive. You lead the business, and those are the actions that you will make the most impact on, that you cannot hire out, or you shouldn't hire out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, you are definitely a wealth of information, wealth of knowledge. And if people want to find out about you, where should they go?
So you can go directly to the website, CFOAF. So like Chief Financial Officer, CFOAF.com. It stands for exactly what you think it does. And so you can find me there on the website. We're on all the social media platforms. CFOAF is on there. If you want to look for me, it's the CFOAF. You can find me on all the social media platforms, but yeah, website's the easiest way. You can even set an appointment to speak with me on the website, or you can set an appointment to speak with any of our specialists. And if you have tax questions, if you have strategy questions, you have fractional CFO questions, we're here for you. And so hit us up on any of those. Happy to talk to anybody.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Byron, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast and for sharing all this information. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a good time.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.